everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm excited to be back on the channel talking to you guys a little bit about Pluto's upcoming ingress. Pluto is retrograde, but it's going to be dipping back into the sign of Capricorn, 29 degrees. All of my cardinal signs, get ready because you're getting another dose of Pluto. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my astro musings in regards to this particular degree and the transit, what we all may be experiencing over these next few months as we see Pluto return to the cardinal earth sign, because there's still some digging to do. There's some work to be done, some secrets to expose, some healing that needs to go down. So thank you guys for joining me. If you like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the button below and you hit the subscription button. Make sure you give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know how you're feeling with this energy and how you've been feeling about this upcoming ingress. Maybe it's news to you. Pluto's going to be in and out of Aquarius really until the end of 2024. So we will see this ingress several times. We've recently seen Pluto move into the sign of Aquarius in spring of 2023, but now it's going to be dipping back into Capricorn. So as you guys are watching it, it's the 6th. This will not be taking place until the 11th of June. So we've got a couple of days before that happens. But I wanted to give you guys a heads up. I want to kind of, like I said, muse on this a little bit in regards to this particular ingress. So let's kind of move the chart ahead. Definitely a lot of Pluto energy is going to be felt tomorrow. That's why I wanted to put out this video early with that Moon-Pluto conjunction. But when we get to the 11th, that is when Pluto is going to retrograde back to 29 degrees. Now, planets at 0 degrees or 29 degrees of any particular sign is extremely potent energy. The 0 is much more about the pure form of that energy. Almost think about a planet being born into that particular theme or that expression of the sign. And then 29 is like that tipping point, the crisis point, where something is coming to a completion, it's coming to an end. Lots of drama, and Pluto is a planet that is about unearthing things, okay? So it can be about bringing out crime, corruption, secrets, abuse, power struggles. But in the sign of Capricorn, it's really about the breakdown of organized, governing structures, right? This is a Saturn-based sign. So this is why we see lots of issues going on with government, slowdowns, shutdowns, stalls, lockdowns. We've seen a lot of these transits with outer planets over this particular degree in recent years. So I'll get into that and we'll kind of do a little bit of a review. But you guys just need to know that it's coming back and it will be there for several days at 29 degrees. So 29 degrees in Capricorn is what we call the third decan of Capricorn. So each particular sign is broken down into 10 degrees. And the third is very much connected to Mercury. So the first would be, Saturn, the second would be Venus, and then the third is Mercury. So it's got like this fusion of Capricorn responsibilities, but also governing over things and making decisions. And it's about authority figures and people in uniform. And Mercury is connected to business transactions, anything that could also be like digital, anything that is connected to systems, workers, communications, contracts, right? So we see the fusion of Virgo and also Capricorn within this particular decan. Now that's the flavor of how this is being expressed. And Capricorn's about authority. So we might see or hear more about authority revolving around workers' rights, revolving around also government involvement in media and also documents and signing and agreements, okay? So 29 degrees really represents this crisis point revolving around making decisions on these topics. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see this happening in the midst of also the nodes that are getting ready to change signs over the summer and an incoming sun opposition. So it's going to feel like the pressure is on when it comes to really exercising our powers of communication. in our own private world, how we are better understanding laws and limitations, how we're better communicating with authority figures, how we're getting along with our bosses, how we're dealing also with limitations and feeling like time is very limited, or feeling like our career can be very dominating, right? Okay, so the Four of Pentacles is the tarot card that is associated with the third decan of Capricorn. And so when we think of the Four of Pentacles, when we think of the Pentacles, it's the element of earth. So it's physical, tangible. It can be about health. It can be about money. It can be about work. And fours do represent stability and security. This card upright is connected to saving money, security, being conservative, scarcity, and control. You see a guy that's like sitting there and he's holding on to all four of his coins and he's unwilling to let them go. So there is some kind of connection to learning how to be more open, learning how to give and take and receive. If we look at money as like an energy, if we're holding on to it too tight, we can't allow it to flow in. And if we are, too free with it, there can also be a sense of not being able to hold on and have the stability that we need. So when this card comes up, I think fused with the energy of Pluto, it gets me thinking about the rules and agreements revolving around borrowing and lending. The agreements that we sign when we take on credit cards or loans or mortgages, with the agreement and understanding to pay it back, and the terms and the interest connected to it, the dates that they need to be, paid by, so on and so forth. But now the conversation, right, Mercury, is going to be really brought up revolving around who's making decisions with money when it comes to, politics and government, and what systems or departments is this going to? Where's the accounting? Where's the numbers? Where is it all going? Who has control over it? And I think we're going to see a lot of bickering over whose fault it is, kind of with the situation that we're in currently when it comes to like the global economics. So I'm speaking as an American because this is definitely coming through the lens of America's, Pluto return, which is still kind of playing out. But we can kind of see this globally as well, the global narrative revolving around who has control over our resources, and who's making all of the decisions about the finances as well. Now, reverse this card can be about overspending, greed, and self-protection. So I could definitely see this being a theme, both upright or reversed out in the world, how we're handling our resources. Are we being conservative enough? Are we afraid of scarcity? Are we overspending and overindulging? And is there a sense of us doing that because we feel like that's protecting us and bringing us some sort of security? Now, in particular, the Four of Pentacles, like I said, has this guy sitting on a stool, and he's supposedly outside of like his hometown. So he's more or less kind of like responding to his environment, trying to protect himself in a situation where, he's not entirely sure if he's safe. So it might talk about being in uncharted kind of territory, literally or figuratively, when it comes to your career or your resources. And I do think that, when you look at him, he's got one hand on a pentacle and another one on his head, talking about the connection with spirit and also his resources with his pentacles, but his feet firmly planted on the ground. He doesn't want anybody taking his resources, and he's strongly attached to his money. So it can be talking about issues revolving around not allowing yourself to be open to physical change, and being super fixated on what you have, what you possess, or super fixated on wealth, and almost the rigidness or the unwillingness to be open up and allow other things to come in, or other forms of wealth to come in, because your mindset can be so fixated on a certain number, a certain possession, so on and so forth. So interesting card for this particular decan. I do think that it does more or less kind of mirror where we've been the last couple of years, where I think as a society, we've seen more focus on greed and consumerism, and also a lot more people talking about end of days and prepping and crisis and worst case scenario, and what people are doing or trying to obtain in the off chance that things kind of break down. Very, very Pluto in its energy. Now, when Pluto's in a retrograde, it basically means from Earth's perspective, it appears to be moving backwards in orbit. Astrologically, retrograde periods are seen as a time of introspection and inner growth or reevaluation. During a Pluto retrograde in particular, it can be interesting because some of the harder or more challenging planets like Pluto, Saturn, Uranus, in the retrograde, that energy can give us the opportunity to feel a little bit of a reprieve. So we're in a retrograde right now. We've been in one for a little while. Essentially, these are the themes that you're going to see that's going to come up with a Pluto retrograde. Intensified inner work, because Pluto has a connection to deep transformation of power in the subconscious mind. So when Pluto's going retrograde, it's a period where we want to turn inward. We really want to focus on an individual level into really diving into our own psyche and confronting our deepest fears, desires, and unresolved issues. It's a time of intense inner work and self-reflection. So a great time to do it. It's definitely easier because we're going to feel like the pressure isn't on as much, even though some of the aspects that we're going to see, especially going into July, the pressure will be there. So you can kind of work with this energy now if you'd like to. Pluto retrograde is known for uncovering hidden truths. That's a huge theme whenever we're looking at Pluto retrograde. It brings hidden truths and buried emotions to the surface, right? Because Pluto, even though it's in an earth sign now, it has its association with the fixed water sign Scorpio. So Pluto is still going to have some of those same archetypal kind of themes regardless of what sign that he's in. But it's going to shine a light on the shadows within ourselves and reveal aspects of our lives. And these might be things that have been overlooked or ignored or kind of stuffed in the closet, for safekeeping. And likely it can be a challenging process, but it offers us all an opportunity for profound personal growth and self-discovery. So the retrograde really gives us that moment where we have the opportunity to go like, okay, I've been afraid of talking about this, or I've been afraid of addressing this situation. And now it's like really time, to kind of get the job done. I find it interesting that we're going to see Pluto go in and out of this particular degree several times between now and the end of 2024. So this may be one of the first real opportunities to reevaluate, since Pluto's gone into Aquarius. Okay, maybe I'm not ready for this next big life change, right? So look at your chart, look at where Capricorn is, look at where Aquarius is. Pluto has left Capricorn after 10 plus years of being in that sign. Now it has moved into Aquarius. And you've probably seen the last 2 or 3 months that there's been a whole new set of lessons, a whole new change, transformation, crisis that has kind of come up in your life. And this is something that can only really fully be worked on by retrograding back to Capricorn, doing the work in Capricorn before it's going to go back into Aquarius at the beginning of 2024. So this retrograde is really beneficial. I really feel like the theme that I'm kind of picking up intuitively is, releasing and letting go. Pluto retrograde involves a process of releasing and letting go of what no longer serves us. And it encourages individuals to shed old patterns, attachments, and beliefs that hinder our growth. It can involve deep facing, seated fears, working through emotional baggage, transforming aspects of our lives that are no longer aligned with our true selves. It's like a snake shedding its skin. That's essentially what this is, because we're going to feel in our life the next couple of months with the nodal squares this pressure, right? Like we're being cooked. For some people, the pain of staying the same will be too much. That will have no other choice other than to go through that Pluto transformation, release, purge, clear, detoxify, go to therapy, talk about the problems, really admit some of our biggest fears so we can move on to Aquarius, because Aquarius is where we have the party. Aquarius is where everybody comes together. It's where we have freedom. It's where we have an opportunity to be our truest selves. It's also going to be about our goals. So in order for us to be able to achieve those goals, we have a lot of work to do with Pluto back being in the sign of Capricorn. I do feel like it has the opportunity to bring all of us empowerment and transformation, because while Pluto is retrograde, it can be intense, but not as intense as when it's direct. And it offers the potential for empowerment and transformation in all of our lives. Pluto retrograde is going to invite us to reclaim our power, heal these old wounds, and rise from the ashes stronger than most are self-aware. It's a time to confront our personal demons and make profound changes that aligns with all of our authentic selves. So if you're somebody who's undergoing a Pluto transit right now on a personal planet, like anything from 27 to 29 degrees of Capricorn, or even 0 to 2 degrees of Aquarius, you're having Pluto in conjunction with an angle or with a personal planet, and you're seeing this probably very significantly in your life. Equally, if you're somebody who was born with Pluto on an angle, or Pluto conjunct one of your personal planets, or you're recently just completing one of those transits, raise your hand. I happen to be one of those 89 people who's like super freaks, and we have, you know, a bunch of planets in Capricorn. So the last like 10 years or so, Pluto's transited through all those planets. I was born with Pluto on my Sun and my Mercury. So I feel like my whole life has been a Pluto transit, but it's cool now getting on the other side of this. And after watching Pluto touch all of my personal planets, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I feel like I'm in a position where I can really enlighten other people and explain to people that once you get through that storm, or it's kind of like I joke, getting your passport stamped to hell and back, when you come back, you have a completely different understanding for life, and you look at change differently, and you embrace endings differently, and you look at death differently. So for many people collectively, right, as we're going through the next couple of months, the nodes will square, which means you don't have to have any planets in Aquarius. You don't even have to have any planets in the fixed signs. We will feel this crunch pretty much between now and mid-August, where the North and the South node are getting ready to square Pluto. Out in the world, I do think it's going to really bring about this uncovering of hidden motivations, right? And I'm just purely applying the themes of the Pluto retrograde with the sign and the angles. So when I talk about uncovering, this is the retrograde, right? It's like digging something up. Because Pluto is associated with hidden motives and subconscious drives, you know, during the retrograde period, it's not unusual for these motivations to become more apparent, allowing us to examine our actions and intentions more deeply. And it's a time to confront any power struggles or control issues within ourselves and strive to be more conscious and authentic of our choices. I feel like it's definitely going to be bringing out all of the gunk and all of the muck in all of our lives, connecting to our responsibilities, connecting to our career, connecting to our, our job out in the world. Even if you're somebody who's a stay-at-home mom, or you're self-employed, or you're somebody who chooses, you know, to be retired and not be in the workforce, Capricorn is still going to represent something that you're responsible for. It can be as simple as like feeding your pet, and as complicated as taking care of, you know, a full company of 500 employees. And, you know, Pluto having gone through Capricorn these last 10 plus years, we're no stranger to what's been breaking down and kind of breaking down over and over again. And it's finally getting ready within the next year and a half to complete this phase and then move into Aquarius. So, I want to remind you guys the Sabian symbol. I know I've read this a dozen times, but I'm going to keep reading it because it reminds me of some of these things that are going on in the world. We keep hearing about all of these groups, right? Whether it's like Congress meeting or Senate or, the World, Health Organization, if it's United Nations. There's so many groups of people that mirror what I'm about to explain to you right now. And so that's what I like about the Sabian symbols, is sometimes they can be quite literal. They're not always figurative. So if you guys are new to the Sabian symbols, we round up. We're going to read 29 degrees would be 30 degrees, okay? Because there's only 30 degrees of each sign. So Capricorn 30, a secret business conference. The keyword is opportunity. The theme is executive session. The symbol speaks to politics and the determination of individuals to control the course of events and resolve important issues through personal alliances. The image of secret business conference or behind-the-scenes meeting alludes to power play or an attempt to determine the outcome of some situation by quietly and cleverly manipulating the personal resources at hand. The emphasis here is on psychological insight, keen understanding of human behavior, tactical maneuvering. At its highest, it represents strategic planning, extraordinary administrative skills, watch for the abuse of power, hidden agendas, and taking unfair advantage of others. The accent on things going on behind the scenes is significant. Secret or private alliances may be involved. Your greatest advantage lies in keeping your plan to yourself until you're ready to put it into action. Line up support before you begin. Guard against putting your personal desires before the best interests of the group. Don't try to manipulate others to achieve your own ends. Stepping stones would be meeting, conference, consultation, association, convention, assembly, discussion, hidden agendas, power plays, politics, strategizing, planning, and maneuvering. It makes me think about like all of these, emergency sessions and having conversations about, budgets and things revolving around just this never-ending list of things that are going on that's really, at least in my country, eroding within society, right? And I think of Capricorn being not just politicians and the government in general, but all of the executive branches. I think about all of the stuff you hear about shadow government and whether or not people think that the United States has been infiltrated. I think about whether or not we have way too much money in politics. We've got politicians that are making obscene amounts of money and essentially getting paid off by lobbyists to pass laws in this country that are undermining US citizens and not really looking out for their best interest. Now, this is going to become exceptionally clear in these next few months. You guys are going to start to see this. I also feel like Capricorn deals with elders in society, so it does deal with older people. So Pluto going into the late degrees of Capricorn is where you see people who have been sitting in positions of power in general for a long period of time, who are older, who may not want to give up that power, who may not want to step down because they are so used to being in control or dictating or determining how things are going to go. I pulled a couple cards for this particular transit, and I asked the cards what was going to be happening, and I used a combination of 2 decks. I've been working pretty regularly with the Beginner's Tarot. I think it's really good for my videos because they're easy to give you guys some food for thought. And then also I was gifted this by the Empress Speaks. She gave me her Oracle deck, which is really cool. I've been using this a little bit. Thank you for that. And it's called Your Next Move. And so I pulled 3 cards and then I pulled one of these. And I did this because for me, having these planets at the late degrees or just the later signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, has me feeling like I'm on the edge of my seat, right? It's just kind of like, man, what can happen next? Like, what's the next move? What do we do? So I have 3 cards. That's the kind of where we've been, where we're at, where we're going, and then the next move. And then I chuckled when I pulled the cards. So the first card that I got was the Magician. Okay. So this is where we have been in regards to the Pluto in Capricorn. So it's nice to pull a card for the past position because we've kind of been in and out of these degrees. Manifestation, focus, creativity, skill, turning visions into reality, inspiration, willpower, desire, resources, and ability. So, the Magician's a cool card. It does talk about, on one hand, the ability to make anything happen. And that can be good or bad. It can talk about illusions and tips and tricks and, somebody who talks you into something or kind of convinces you of something or makes something look really good. So it depends on the surrounding cards. I feel like in the past position, it has been about, I think, approaching some of these Pluto and Capricorn themes in our lives as everything's fine, nothing to see here, keep going with on your life, like, there's no problem. And the macro and the micro are very similar, where we're seeing this out in the world, where there's a lot of sweeping things under the rug. I think it's pretty safe to say that, like, on a personal level, a lot of us are doing this too. And if it weren't for some of the hard Pluto aspects, like the retrograde, the square with the nodes, we wouldn't deal with some of these things, or we wouldn't kind of question, like, what's going on here? Like, this seems kind of like shady, or maybe that's a bigger problem than I thought, or, maybe I can't trust this person, or, maybe I just totally need to, cut this thing off and I didn't see it until now. So be mindful of illusions. Be mindful also that a lot of this is about creating your own reality. So you have the ability to change something if that's something that you really want to do. Second card that I got here for the center position was the Four of Wands, but it was reversed. So the Four of Wands reverse is leaving home, lack of roots, arguments, conflict with others in life, lack of support, instability, and feeling unwelcome. Generally, this is a positive card. It's about coming together and celebrating and, like, being with like-minded people and, like, joyous occasions. And when it's retrograde, it's basically saying, like, okay, there's something in the air here, right? with the Magician, and then the Four of Wands reverse. There's something in the air that's like, people aren't really getting along. Like there's some issues, there's some problem. We're having some conflict. We're not feeling supported, feeling unwelcome, conflicts with others, and lack of roots, arguments. Pluto can do that, right? We can see that. I think a lot of it's also that we're picking up a lot of energy from Mars and Venus in conjunction, coming into square with Uranus. And as Mars is continuing to move through Leo, it's going to come into a quincunx with Pluto. So that's going to be this whole kind of like, what's going on? What's happening? Why are we so agitated? We are going to notice that with a lot of Pluto-Mars aspects in the skies, people need an outlet. It's almost like a volcanic energy where there's so much buildup of frustration or like feeling agitated that if we don't have a physical outlet, if we're not working out, if we're not really practicing on monitoring our energy in a positive way, then we can have outbursts and we can definitely be, confrontational. Pluto in Capricorn is especially cruel. Being a colder Earth, Saturn-based sign, it can definitely be, a transit where we can see the cruel side of success or business or, politics, where, the big guy doesn't really acknowledge or look out for or take care of, the little people down here. So there can be a sense of like people getting angry because we're all kind of feeding off of each other and feeling like this vicious cycle of not feeling supported, right? And then the final card that I got was the King of Coins. So interesting, because I wonder if this is that connection. Like for some people, it is literally a Pluto and Capricorn figure. So it could be a Capricorn that you're going back and forth with, that you're having like a power struggle with. It could represent somebody who is like a father figure, a stepfather, a grandparent, a boss, somebody who's a bully, somebody who represents someone who holds some kind of power over you. So King of Pentacles comes up. I wonder if it's literally a Capricorn for some people. And this is a practical leader, prosperity, business security, provider, abundance, reliable, a patriarch, somebody who's productive and sensual. So the good news is this is the future card. So it's saying that if we're feeling like something is off or unclear, and if we're feeling lack of support or frustration, the King of Coins is somebody who's like, I'm going to provide my own security. I'm going to build it myself. I'm going to take the situation into my own hands. It can be a Taurus, a Capricorn, or a Virgo that can show up. This can also be talking about leaders, kings, men who provide and care and protect and have a sense of integrity. There's something about them that is very royal and regal, and something that we look up to, right? So this can be talking about somebody who's coming in that can create some kind of change. I wonder if this is a passing of the torch. Like we can see situations where, people in higher positions within companies are, they're retiring and they're bringing new people in, or we're going to see that within families, there's going to be structural changes going on where, we might see new, patriarchs kind of coming into the family and new heads of the family that are kind of arriving. Focusing on health, focusing on wealth, but in a sense of basically being protective of that and realizing that to be in a position of power, it comes with a lot of responsibility, and we don't want to abuse that power. I'm glad that it came up upright because it makes me feel better about the transition, and it makes me feel like this can be the rise of new people within society and within our lives that appreciate that and aren't going to abuse the power, but it can also be us doing it for ourselves. So like I said, with that kind of feeling on the edge of my seat, I was like, okay, what's next? I love this. The what's next is walk away with your dignity intact. I like that. So I think that with any Pluto transit, right, it doesn't matter whether it's an opposition or a square or a conjunction, the theme of death comes up. And not all deaths are physical. It can be quitting your job, leaving your marriage. It can be embracing a new career, moving to a new city. It can be, losing a pet or saying goodbye to a loved one, letting go of a bad habit, right? Or just going through like an ego death. So not all Pluto transits are physical. So I think with the walking away with your dignity intact is also a lot of the willingness to confront the shadow, confronting things that are wrong, confronting things that are corrupt. I think it's about corruption. And so when I think about corruption, I think about the only way to fight that is with integrity and maintaining a sense of dignity, and also knowing when to be like, no, like I can do this myself. It's better for me to do it myself than to kind of buy into going along with the crowd, knowing that some things might be wrong. Interesting. I mean, I think a lot also about people transitioning and like, my past history working as like a death midwife, and a lot of people wanting to die with dignity and wanting to do it in a way that's on their own terms, and wanting to have that time to themselves to, go out in a manner where they spend time with their family and their loved ones, and they want to be remembered in a certain way. And they don't want people standing around and crying over them, or, hovering around and seeing them in a state of like despair or ill health. And so I think of that when this comes up, that some of us know that the right thing to do is to just let something go, right? And not have resentment or harbor any negative feelings, or feel like we need to, kind of coax something along and just a couple more years in this job or in this relationship. Walking away with dignity intact. Really interesting. Really cool cards for this particular transit. Before I finish, I just want to take you guys through some of these past looks. And I want to show you the specific dates so you know what to look for. And then I want to touch on the T-square as well. So like I said, the retrograde is going to start on June 11th. Okay. Not the retrograde, but it drops back down to 29 degrees on June 11th. And we're going to have Pluto at 29 degrees from June 11th through July 26th. So if we watch the skies, it'll be until July 26th. And I just want to highlight something. We're going to see right after the new moon in Cancer, the North and the South node are going to move to 29 degrees of Aries and 29 degrees of Libra, okay? So in particular, extremely intense right around this time, because what we will have is an exact Pluto square the nodes, a Pluto T-square, and we will have a building grand cardinal cross, okay? And that'll be at the end of July. Now, the Pluto retrograde is going to go until October the 10th. And that's when we're going to have Pluto go direct. So it's going to be right here. And when Pluto goes direct, it's going to be at 27 degrees. Okay, so it's only going to retrograde back to 27 degrees. So if you have anything, like I said, 26 to 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, you're going to be feeling either a Pluto square or a conjunction. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn placements within the last like 4 degrees or so, you're going to feel that particular square. Intensity of change and transformation is going to be very obvious in your life. Remember that when planets are stationing, to go retrograde or direct, something very significant can happen. There can be something very powerful. And something that I was noticing is right around the time that Pluto is stationing, we're going to see Mars come into conjunction with the South Node here in Libra, which is going to be debilitated. So we're feeling that loss and release and letting go. And this day caught my eye, October 7th, 2023. When Mars squares Pluto and there is some kind of conflict and power struggle and the potential for there to be like warlike energy. And we're going to pick up the energy of a a Cancer moon. So we're going to have that square. And when the moon is in Cancer at 29, we're also going to have Venus coming out of the retrograde shadow. So there's some wild stuff that's going to be happening over summertime. Then on the 19th of December, Pluto returns back to 29 degrees. Here. There we go. So from the 19th of December to the 21st of January, so this will be 2024, we're going to have Pluto at 29 degrees. So there's going to be essentially 2 chunks of time here, June 11th through July 26th, 2023, and December 19th through January 21st, 2024. Both of these time periods, we will have Pluto at 29 degrees, and we're going to feel the crunch. And if you guys remember this last year, earlier in 2023, when the Sun and Pluto moved into conjunction, it was also at the last degrees of Capricorn. And so I'm going to keep screaming this from the rooftops. Please go and educate yourself about the pandemic treaty that they are talking about, the WHO. They are meeting, and there is ongoing meetings and talks basically to start collaborating with a number of different countries for oversight in terms of health and mandatory, let's just say, health mandates. I have to be careful what I say. And being able to override any given country's pre-existing rights when it comes to mandates, when it comes to potential future lockdowns, how they're intending to govern and make decisions on an international level when it comes to future pandemics. And the terms are very loose. Pandemics can be anything from physical pandemics that could affect humans to pandemics that affect animals, including also, they're saying, information pandemics. And there is a whole agenda to ensure that this will be enforced on an international level, and they can intervene and override our pre-existing constitutional freedom, and rights. So very concerning that when this first conjunction was happening at the beginning of the year, they were meeting, talking about this with intention of being able to, rework some of these agreements. And some of these are set to actually go into effect in 2024. Now, may not sound like a big deal, but to me it's a big deal because we didn't vote for these people. We didn't agree for any of this stuff. Quite frankly, it wasn't handled well to begin with. And the deeper that you dive into some of this stuff, you're going to look into this and you're going to find out that some of these things were put in alignment during the Saturn-Pluto conjunctions intentionally, I think. And there are also predating, information, data dumps that have come out that's essentially showing that there has been pharmaceutical companies that went and got, not copyright, but they basically went and got the validations to have ownership of certain vaccines for coronavirus that was in 2019 to 2020, that was predating the actual pandemic. So little concerning that when you follow the money and you start looking at some of this stuff and you go and look at the background history, that it's all intermingled and intertwined, and all roads lead back to the manufacturers who have agreements with the government and with politicians who are being paid off, who are forcing us to have certain mandates and agree to some of these terms to get everybody on a world health mandate schedule. Little concerning for me personally. So go and educate yourself about this, especially considering we're going to have more of these conjunctions that are going to be taking place at the beginning of 2024, as some of these things are set to go into effect as early as 2024, I believe in the spring. But if enough people are talking about this, we have time to be able to raise awareness about that and also change the narrative revolving around some of this stuff. So call me crazy, but that's just my 2 cents. I want to take you guys back, and I want to show you a couple dates back in time. So let's start with what's most recent, and then we'll work our way back. So I want to show you guys just here recently, February 10th and 11th of this year. Okay, so February 10th is when we saw Mercury and Pluto come into a conjunction. So some of these same themes revolving around power struggles, conflicts, challenges revolving around secrets, information, coming out or getting ready to come out or be seen, or talks about some of the decisions that are being made in, high society, or within these elitist group or these government groups, with that Pluto-Mercury conjunction. And then we also saw from February 11th through March 23rd, Pluto was at 29 degrees. So February 11th, all the way through March 23rd. And so in the midst of that, we saw a couple things. We saw some sextiles from Sun, Mercury, Neptune to Pluto. We saw a square from Venus. And then it was on the 23rd that Pluto ingressed into Aquarius. And it's been pretty loud. I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like that's when, at least in my opinion, some of these things that people were calling conspiracies like really started coming out, and people were realizing that, you know, there was some facts to some of the things that people have been suggesting is going on out in the world for these last few years. But Pluto in Aquarius is about that change and transformation of society, right? On one hand, it can be that society is going through this kind of rebellious period in this phase and pushing back against some of the shadow. But it can also mean that there is like a darker, more kind of dystopian future that can be arising that's about, you know, having less and enjoying it, not owning anything and making sacrifices, and, you know, humans feeling bad about the impact that they're having on the planet. Regardless of how you feel about that, that's not me speculating any one particular thing. It's just, it's definitely been felt because from Pluto's ingress, it was already within about a 3-4 degree square to the nodes. So this pressure that we've been feeling really since about the end of March is just, it's just building, right? So if we take you guys a little bit further back and we take a look at what was going on in 2020, so specifically, I was looking at February of 2020. This is when, February, June, and December. This is when Saturn was at 29 degrees. Okay, so very kind of like mid-March of 2020. Some of you guys remember just starting to hear news about, you know, the virus out in the world, the potential for lockdowns, shutdowns, things like that. And then by the end of March, that was the new normal. And it was at 29 degrees up until the better part of the end of March. And then it was June of 2020 when Saturn retrograded and it hit 29 degrees again. Okay, so it was end of June going into July. And it was at 29 degrees until about mid-July. And then we saw it again at 29 degrees, and this was in December of 2020. Now, no coincidence, each and every one of these particular time periods also kind of went hand in hand with, we're opening things up, we're locking things down, we're opening things up, we're locking things down. That's more so connected to the fact that Saturn can also deal with boundaries, it can deal with borders. That year, we were also experiencing, you know, potential like shutdowns of the government and issues regarding budgets. We were also hearing all kinds of issues revolving around border news and things relating to, especially here in the United States, the southern border. And just so much back and forth. Lockdowns, no lockdowns, masks, no masks, you know, push for vaccines, you know, still wanting to learn more. And obviously Saturn being in the sign of Capricorn was where things were being limited and were being held back. We saw things that were slowing down. Saturn at the late degrees, people were getting laid off. People were not going to work. We were not as productive. We were seeing shortages of things. So I think that's more Saturn. And I wonder if this was preparing us for Pluto coming into these degrees. And now in so many ways, I think we're starting to see where that was the intention, or that was made to be the new normal, or how much wealth was acquired and was made as a result of this whole period of these lockdowns and just a lot of corruption. I think that was going on both within politics but also within big business. Now, if you guys remember, we then saw both Jupiter and Saturn move together into 0 degrees of Aquarius. So that was that grand conjunction that we had in 2020, expansion and contraction coming together, hopeful for the future, obviously. Little did we know it was going to be about another 1.5 years or so that we were still going to be kind of living with this being like a new normal. Now, if we go a little bit more so forward into the future, another time that came up for me as well was when we had a Venus retrograde, and this was at the end of 2021 going into the beginning of 2022. But when Venus was retrograde, it was in the late degrees of Capricorn. It started turning retrograde around 26 degrees, so it was close, but it was in conjunction to Pluto. Now, when Venus turned retrograde, if you guys remember at the end of December going into January, this is when it was kind of like, okay, what are we doing? Are we moving into the next year? Are we gonna have any significant changes? Lots of talks also revolving around, changes that were going to be going on. I remember with like the Supreme Court, there was also lots of talk about, potential future in regards to like women's rights, very much, I think, dealing with Venus. But there was also decisions that were being made behind closed doors in regards to the Supreme Court, and decisions that were made that were sealed that did not come out until spring of 2022 in regards to abortion rights in the United States. So once again, things happening during that retrograde that then became visible in the skies down the road. Now, the North Node in Taurus, a lot of that was about fertility and growth and life and what is considered to be conservative. And so I think that's why we saw a lot of that play out in the spring of 2022. Once again, regardless of where you stand on the matter, I'm not going to speculate or give you guys my 2 cents on it. I'm just talking about how it relates to the astrology. So when we saw this particular retrograde, something also that kind of piqued my attention was we saw a very unusual Mars-Venus conjunction. And Mars came into its exaltation in Capricorn. It was following with Venus in February. And both Mars and Venus hit 29 degrees and came into conjunction with Pluto. Now, this is right around the end of February, beginning of March of 2022. Looks like this conjunction started at 27 degrees here around March 2nd. And then we saw Venus and Mars hit 29 degrees. Close enough to Pluto to pick up that Plutonian intensity. But that was another turning point where I think it was activating that as well. At the time, we had the North Node and the South Node in Mars and Venus signs. So there's something going on revolving around the future of potential markets, what was going to be going on with resources. And we had a Jupiter, Sun, Neptune connection. So there was also still, lots of talk between, politics and also health and hospitals and mandates and things that were being, decided upon on a global level because, Jupiter and Pisces can be about the masses. And I also think a lot of this was about what was hidden and what was concealed. Neptune is about viruses. Pluto can be about insurance. It can be about, things that are being paid out to life insurance, to hospitals, things involving health insurance, and also, older people. And starting to kind of look around in 2022, questioning and wondering how much loss have we had? Are people actually doing better? And how are some of our older, family members and, people in society, how they've been faring since some of the events since 2020. And now I'm going to show you guys the Pluto square the nodes. So I want to kind of touch on that before we wrap up. So let's get into that. Oh, you know what? I think we had a Mercury retrograde there too. We did. I don't know if it did it conjunct Pluto? It got close. So it looks like we had a Mercury retrograde there. Yeah, at the end of December of 2022. It was close. Venus and Mercury were conjunct, but Pluto wasn't at 29. But still, we had a similar conjunction. And so it might be interesting to go and look at just what was actually going on economically, January of each year, the last 2 or 3 years, as we've had retrogrades and conjunctions conjunct Pluto, because there's a lot of like, okay, us hearing from the government what they're assessing that the next year is going to kind of look like economically. So as we start to come into the square that's going to be taking place, like I said, it's going to be strong now in the month of June. And it's going to go all the way until like end of July, maybe even beginning of August. So we've been picking up this square really since Pluto was in Aquarius and it was squaring the fixed signs. But when we have it square in cardinal, it's a very different energy because cardinal signs are assertive. These are the signs that really kind of trigger and bring on the beginning of each of the various seasons. So whether it's, Aries, which is initiating and beginning new life, or Cancer, which is, taking care of and protecting, Libra, which is negotiating and kind of mediating, and Capricorn, which is managing, they're all very busy signs. So it's almost harder when we see the fixed squares because they don't want to move. And then when Pluto drops back into Capricorn and we see the north and the south node come into now a north node ruled by Mars and a south node ruled by Libra, peace and mediation and partnerships and alliances, it's going to be much more challenging to have, right? It's going to be harder to find that balance with other people because the north node in Aries is about action, standing up, fighting, independence. It's about listening to your gut. It's about reacting. So when we see 29, 29, 29, my eyes get really big. So this is going to start on July 17th. Pluto will be the focal point of, at this moment, a T-square. Technically, the moon's going to be in Cancer, so you're going to start feeling the effects of the grand cardinal cross. But I think it's going to be the most intense from about mid-July. That sun is going to hit 29 degrees on July 22nd. And let me tell you guys something. Something is going down at the end of July. Something is going down because it's not astrologically possible to see all of those planets come into oppositions and squares and not have something happen. That Sun-Pluto opposition could quite literally be huge changes going on the home front as a result of what's going on, politically or within, government or, whoever's in charge. And then we're going to continue to see the nodes square Pluto for some time. So until the north and the south node hit more or less, let's say 27 degrees from mid-July until right around mid-August, it's lit. Pluto is on fire. And it's going to be showing you where in Capricorn in your chart you must make a change. It's not often that I say that, but we have to. In evolutionary astrology, when the nodes are squared by a planet, you have to integrate that particular planetary theme. So if Pluto in Capricorn retrograde is release the power, release the control, show the corruption, expose the shadow, expose the abuse, that's what we do. And Saturn is connected to Capricorn. So at the time, we've also got Saturn that's in a retrograde, okay? And so Saturn in Pisces is not just about spirituality. Saturn in Pisces, especially retrograde, is going to be us reevaluating how much trust did we put into some of these groups. What are we not being told? What's being hidden or what's being withheld? What did we think or what were we shown on television? What facts and data and information was put out there that was falsified and not true? How were people locked up and told that they couldn't leave their homes? How were we afraid to go out into society? And where do we have bigger problems, not just economically, but spiritually, psychologically, right? Emotionally. We've got children who also have, socializing issues that have been, restricted from being able to see their friends, elders who were in hospice or hospitals that we did not get to visit. It's like shift is really going to hit the fan. So I keep looking at the squares and also looking at Saturn retrograde. And right when these squares are happening, we've got Mercury, Mars in the sign of Virgo, healthcare, right? Job numbers, all coming into opposition with Neptune and Saturn. People are going to really start to see the economic decline. We're going to see job numbers, I think, dwindle. I think we're going to see more layoffs. I think we're going to see more financial issues end of August into September, as soon as we start seeing these oppositions. As much as I hate to say that, that's genuinely what I think is going to start happening, especially considering in the United States chart, in the Sibley chart, it's a Sag rising. So this particular retrograde is going to be happening in the whole sign 10th house, which is going to be about career, all in opposition to Saturn and Neptune. Whole sign wise is connected to the United States 4th house. It's a little disjointed. You see a lot of Aries in there, but it could be, Placidus 3rd going into the 4th. which is, you know, where we've actually really done ourselves a disservice by shutting things down, locking things down, hiding away. And we're now starting to see several years later this effect that it's having on all of us economically. So what does it mean for you? Okay, really take a look at Capricorn in your chart. That area, that house specifically, what that house represents. Each house is something different. The first is going to be more in a connection to yourself, your body, your appearance, your personal action. If it's happening in your second house, it's going to be more about money, self-esteem, resources, and possessions. If it's happening in your third house, it's going to be about ideas, communication, anything in regards to siblings, perhaps vehicles, or even traveling. The fourth house is going to be about home, family, roots, and the past, also about property or one of your parents. Fifth house can be about children, creativity, lovers, self-expression, and talent. Six can be about your office space, your habits, your patterns, you know, who you're working with, time to reassess relationships that are also not in balance, and if it's time to quit something. Seventh house, relationships, partnerships. So this can also be issues with a client. It can be changes revolving around committed relationships, marriages, business partnerships, or managers. Eighth can be about joint resources, taxes, inheritance, anything in regards to you know, spouses, resources. This can also be about money owed. Ninth is going to be more education, travel, your philosophy on life, legal matters, and teaching or publishing. 10th is going to be relating to career, your relationship with superiors, bosses, or one of your parents, your reputation out in society. 11th house is goals, anything in regards to your friends, networks, organizations, or just groups of people. And then the 12th house is going to be what's hidden, spiritual, subconscious, behind the scenes, and yeah, hidden, right? Things that are going to be more so hidden, literally hidden spaces. You have to take into consideration the house, the aspects that the planets are making in your chart. It's not any one, you know, like prediction is going to apply to everyone. The best thing you can do is listen to your ascendant or your rising sign horoscope for the month of June. If you guys haven't already seen my horoscopes for June, go and check it out. I go through all of these aspects. I talk about the Pluto retrograde back into Capricorn, what it means for you specifically. Know that this is something you're still going to be working on clear until 2024. You know, in 2024, we're going to see a lot more of Pluto being in Aquarius. It'll drop back down into Capricorn briefly for a little bit, and then finally end of 2024 going into 2025, it's moving into Aquarius and it's going to stay there. Now, just as a reminder, this particular square, let me show it to you guys. So those of you guys who are visual, because I know a lot of you guys watch these videos, or I've been hearing that you guys are watching these videos because you're learning, and so you're kind of teaching yourself astrology, which is cool. This is the square. I'm going to show it to you with the sun so you can see the grand square. So at first, when it comes through here, when it first hits 29, oops, I take that back. Okay, just know when it first moves into 29 in about 2 weeks, it's first picking up a T-square. Okay, this is the T-square, the opposition, the 90-degree angle, kind of like a T-bone. So it's reinforcing Pluto. So whatever is going on, wherever Capricorn is in your chart, Pluto is bringing on this necessary change before it goes into Aquarius next year. But also this necessary change is going to be brought on by the North Node going into Aries and the South Node going into Libra. So you're going to feel the pressure, like I said, the second half of July. But once we get to right around here, it's like there's some emotional need to confront something, pushing us to change. Just mark your calendar, basically, from the 16th through, like, let's say the 25th of July. That's when, like, shift really hits the fan. And then we're still going to have a period until the North and the South Node hit about 27 degrees because it's still squaring. I work with, like, a 2 or 3 degree orb. It's still squaring clear into August. But in my mind, it's easier to work with a grand cross than it is with a T-square, because the T-square is going to feel like there's this crisis in some area of our life that we have to deal with. Now, the square aspect in astrology, it's annoying, it's agitating, it's considered probably one of the most challenging aspects and is meant to bring tension, conflict, and growth opportunities. So that's the good news, right? Remember that what separates crisis from an opportunity is your perspective. And yeah, some of us are going to be faced with something that's needing to kind of change or die off, but it is allowing us to go deeper into our destiny and into the North Node. And the North Node, being in Aries, is about being more of an individual. It's about standing up for yourself and fighting. Now, the North Node is going to be ruled by Mars, and Mars is going to be coming into an opposition with Saturn, literally as this is setting up. So there is another kind of storyline behind the scenes that's like, hey, in order for you to do your North Node work, you need to like fight or push back against what is hidden or what's being swept under the rug or what you're not wanting to acknowledge or where something is intentionally being misrepresented. So you want to look for that. And you know what comes with the Pluto square? I mean, changes to your individual karmic life path, karmic lessons, huge transformational processes, intense transformations, because Pluto represents deep psychological transformation and power and control. So when it squares the lunar nodes, it intensifies these lessons and challenges associated with the North and the South node, and it's triggering profound transformation process. Karmic lessons, the North Node represents the path of growth and development, okay, right here. And while the South Node represents karmic patterns and past influences, Pluto square the nodes can bring karmic lessons, urging individuals to confront their fears and break free of old patterns and release attachments that no longer serve growth. Why am I bringing this up so much? By the time this happens, there are going to be things happening in your life where you're going to have no real choice but to change. So awareness is king, right? So as long as you know that it's coming, you know that there's going to be something going on where there is going to be a need to tap into our emotions, learn how to push back against some kind of limiting force, and realize that while Pluto kind of disrupting a certain house in your chart is bringing crisis, he wants to bring opportunity. With this Pluto square, 100% you're going to see power struggles. Pluto square the nodes creates power struggles within oneself and relationships and brings up issues of control, manipulation, and the need for empowerment. Individuals may feel a strong urge to take charge of their destiny, but may encounter resistance or obstacles along the way. And that's definitely expected because the nodal squares do represent the need to keep working through something. So it might be something you're working on, you know, July into August. It's not all going to hit at one time. I also feel like with the Saturn-Mars opposition that's kind of hitting at the same time is like a lot of being told not yet, or do it, but do it in a timely manner, or do it the right way, or, you know, what's going to be best for you. I'm going to tell you right now, 29 degrees is a Leo degree, okay? It is going to be about younger people, children. It's going to be about protecting children. It's about protecting future generations. It's going to be about heart-related issues, health, heart, anything relating to like cardiovascular stuff. And I do feel like this is going to be about people pushing back. And you're going to hear more about where doctors and healthcare providers and holistic doctors and, you know, Mars in Virgo is going to bring all the herbalists and bring all the nurses and all the people forward who are going to push back against things that have been silenced or things that were not, you know, disclosed. You will see opportunities for breakthroughs, even though there's challenges. I think, you know, on one hand, it offers opportunities for profound personal growth, but it does come with upheavals and intense emotional experiences that are likely going to test your resilience and your determination. And then finally, you know, evolution and soul process. I mean, that's kind of like, that's why we're here, right? We're here to supersede and overcome some of our astrological placements in our chart. So you might be born with this configuration, so you know that your whole life might kind of be feeling like there's this sense of kind of overcoming things. But I do feel like for those of us who are just going through the motions and having this particular transit, yes, it will feel like a crucial period of evolution and alignment, but it's to help get us on our soul's purpose. It's going to push us on an individual level to go deeper into our subconscious. And like I said, be really kind of confronting some of these shadow issues and aligning our actions with our authentic self. So it can be a very transformative journey leading us to personal empowerment and spiritual growth. That's really what this is going to be about. But in particular, the cardinal square in general, whether you're looking at this as just the T-square or when we're looking at this as the grand cardinal cross that's going to be setting up, is going to be pretty tricky at the end of July. I do think it can, specifically the 3 points represent personal identity and relationships and challenges between our personal identity and our career responsibilities. It depends on, which angle it's actually squaring, and like if it's in a superior position. Pluto is going to be pretty high in the skies in comparison in zodiacal order to the nodes. So it's going to represent the need to totally transform our careers, to transform, I think, some of our goals. And for some of us, it's changing careers, going back to work, retiring, going in a different direction, and looking at how we look at our success, right, within society, how we're redefining what success is and how much we're willing to kind of give away to that. I think also that when you see cardinal signs that are squaring, it is associated with initiation, action, leadership, and change. So we are going to see a side of ourselves that are going to be more assertive. There's going to be more drive, a need for movement and progress. And there's going to feel like there's this intensity and this need for us to do it in an urgent fashion. But with squares, definitely we do see a significant amount of tension and often challenges because there's conflicting energies, right? So these aren't planets. They feel like planets. They're shadow planets. The only real planets that are involved are the Sun and Pluto. So there's going to be this sense of needing to let something die off so something else can be nurtured or taken care of or reborn. For many of us, it's like, we have to come up with innovative solutions. We have to be focused on being more decisive and developing new skills. And I think this Pluto square can serve as a catalyst for personal and professional growth, encouraging us to really confront these obstacles and make important life changes that we've been putting off for some time. I like about this square that it really helps us focus on balance and integration, because I think it's about balancing and bringing all of these energies together. It requires us to be self-aware and not to compromise, finding creative solutions to honor our needs. So all separate areas of our life can be acknowledged and can find balance, and finding a much more harmonious way to express these energies based off of like the planets that are involved. So like I said, if you happen to be a later degree of the cardinal signs, you're going to feel this much more intensely. But even if you don't, because we've got planets squaring the nodes on both sides, the Sun in Cancer squares the nodes, is saying, what are you going to take action when it comes to really loving or protecting? What's going on with your home? What's going on with your family, right? In comparison to Pluto square the nodes, which is, power struggles and, people telling you what you can and cannot do with your home, your property, where you can't live, whether or not you're safe, whether or not you have what you need. I think we're going to hear more about taxes. I think we're going to hear more about real estate taxes, more about the real estate market and challenges revolving around that as well. So TLDR, right? Find Capricorn in your chart. Pluto was there. Look at Aries and Libra. And know that in July, Pluto is going to be putting the pressure, basically saying something needs to change in the Capricorn area of your life. You need to make that change so you can go deeper into Aries and you can experience the growth and the action that you're looking for. And also it's going to be putting the pressure on the South Node, which might bring up a sense of seeing more imbalances, or where indecisiveness has come up too much, or where relying on others has come up too much, or imbalances in relationships can come up as well. And buckle up and get ready for the change collectively these next few months. I really encourage you guys to reflect on what 2020 has taught you, especially those periods that I referenced in 2020. So the March, June, and December, where there was something going on where it was like a pivotal thing that was about to evolve, and you made it through, right? You made it through some of those challenging transits. You've seen Pluto ingress into Aquarius. I do think that this push is like the nudge that we all need, to be honest with you. Let me know, how are you feeling with these energies? Is it aspecting something in your chart? Is it squaring a personal planet or an angle? Maybe give some tips on how you've navigated this. Maybe I'll do another video on Pluto square the nodes. But I want to let you guys know this is when it's going to start getting kicked up a little bit more. if you're feeling the heat, you're feeling the intensity, you can join me on Fridays. I'm here doing readings live on my channel. I'm always here 7 o'clock p.m. on Pacific time. Excuse me, it's 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Central, and it's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern Friday nights. Make sure you're subscribed. If you check my community tab, you're going to be able to see the link that I post in advance if you would like to get a reading. Also, my books are open in July and August for personal sessions. If you click my website below and go to beyondtheveiledtarot.com, you can book a session with me. I also offer reports via audio in my email, courses to learn tarot and astrology, and also webinars. So much stuff. Go and check that out. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter so you're alerted as to when I have new content coming out on my website. There will be a webinar that's going to be taking place on the 11th on Sunday. It's going to be about the Venus retrograde. So if you guys want to check that out, you can sign up for that as well. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you have a good week. I'll be back here on Thursday, and I will see all of you guys very soon. Take care.